Alright, so Attack on Titan has of course had so many hype moments, so many legendary moments, and Attack on Titan has really cemented itself as one of the best anime of all time. And of course, on this list, this is not going to include manga spoilers. At the time of recording, the final episode is going to come out in about 5 days. One other caveat before we get into the list is I took into account for a lot of these points my first reaction when watching them, so it's not something that will be heavily analyzed. For example, when they're on top of the tower and you see Reiner and Bertolt about to bite their hands, something like that won't really be as elevated on this list because of course that is way more hype and cool when we look back in hindsight. So let's just get right into it. And number 10 is Irwin's Charge, and no, not the second charge, Irwin's first charge. I'm talking about when he's in the Titan's mouth and he's yelling at them to advance and move forward even though he is about to die and likely going to die. And of course we know he survives, and he has that epic moment where he saves them with just one hand, and it's sick how he goes on the whole rest of the show with just one hand. But it really showed the stakes, and they were trying to display that even though their leader was about to die, that their mission was so desperate, and this was such a golden opportunity that they had no choice but to continue to advance and continue to try and achieve their goals. And that just blew my mind and was such a huge level of stakes. And of course we have that sick moment with Eren afterwards that is equally as cool. Moving into number 9, we have Kenny versus Levi, and of course this is heavily influenced by the animation style and the way they did this, but that's still not even just the beginning. Not only did Wood knock it out of the park and make this one of the most iconic scenes in anime history with some of the most fluid and cinematic style of animation and anime that we have ever seen, ever. Even to this point, I have never seen motion like that looked that crisp and that smooth. But of course it was also the point where we realized the stakes of this world, and that yes, it is true, as we all knew beforehand and as we all know now, that the humans are just as much of a threat to people as the Titans are. That moment too gave depth to Levi, who at that point had been a pretty mysterious character. We actually see people die, and we see Jean struggling with whether he should shoot a human or not. It was a deep emotional moment, as well as it had perfect animation, and I don't think anyone would make a top 10 list without that. Now, number 8, please do not cook me. Please give me a break on number 8. Number 8 is probably the most controversial point on this whole list, and I have the rumbling all the way down here at number 8.
What?
I know, but when you're building your list, you're gonna realize how many hype moments there are and how hard it is to actually make a list like this, because Attack on Titan has banger moment after banger moment, and the rumbling has of course been built up to throughout the entire duration of the series, and it was honestly really sick, and I don't have an issue with it. I just like the other moments better, and I don't know if that's gonna piss some people off. Maybe it was the distance in between each season release that really knocked the wind out of me with this scene, but it was still good and still great, and still number 8 on the list. And it really showed Eren struggling as we see him flash back to that kid that he knows he's gonna eventually kill, and then we also see Eren struggling for one of the first times in his more adult form. We see him struggling mentally. It made a lot of the moments in season 1 make a lot more sense, as well as the fact that it's the rumbling. You have a whole bunch of Titans going to kill a whole bunch of people. You know how insane that was, because we used to just have one Colossal Titan and now we have a million. That was of course gonna make it onto the list. And number 7, leading into that, the first episode. I truly believe the first episode of Attack on Titan is the most iconic first episode in anime history. And I honestly don't even think a lot of people would dispute that. But the Colossal Titan appearing over the wall, peering over, with Armin giving one of the coldest opening monologues we've seen. We see Wit debuting this crazy animation style. Eren's mom dying as Eren is right there being pulled away was just insane. We have all of this mystery with Eren's dad, and the first episode set up so much that even now at the end of the show, it's still answering questions. And I know I said we're not going to take any foreshadowing and stuff like that into account, but just as a nod, not taking into account, of course the amount of foreshadowing in that episode is insane, and that honestly sets up number 6. And that's when we figure out Eren did everything. The meme of him whispering in his dad's ear, everything about that episode just shook my mind. From the title of the episode, from the way that they had Eren look demonic and cold, like he was a man possessed, like Eren no longer had any sense of humanity in him, and he was solely just a vessel to complete whatever his goal may be. The way they executed that episode by having Zeke look even more scared, more terrified than his dad, was honestly crazy. And we understand so much of what his dad did, why they said his dad killed the founding Titan. And having Eren be the one to tell him to do that was just like, what is going on? We knew that we were watching peak, we knew that we were watching something that was deeply written, and we knew that every moment in that show was a plot point. But at that point we realized that nah, this was written on a level that just cannot and will not ever be replicated. And no matter how many anime come out, no matter how many different series of television come out, there will never be something something that was executed that blew everyone's mind as much as it was having Eren be the one to go back in time and tell his dad to do everything, and that Eren set up all of those events, that Eren is the mastermind behind everything in the Attack on Titan world. The way they executed it and making you not feel like it was an asshole and making you feel that this was a moment that was planned. Coming in at number 5 is Eren's invasion, and I think everyone knows what a sick moment this was, what an insane moment this was when we finally see what Eren has been doing that whole time. Because remember, we hadn't even seen Eren at the beginning of season 4. We had no idea what was going on. I think a lot of us clicked on Attack on Titan and thought we clicked on the wrong show. And then when we finally see him connect with Reiner and they're in that underground little cubby in the catacombs while that intense speech was going on, the real declaration of war, and then Eren pops out and goes crazy and eats everyone, and then he finally breaks the rules of anime. He doesn't allow her to power up. All of the scouts come in. It was an insane moment. That moment was one of the best declarations of war in any anime ever, because so many of them do something dramatic, do something crazy. Attack on Titan was like, yeah, we're gonna do something dramatic and we're gonna make it way better than anyone else can. The way that all of the scouts were reacting to Eren, I think is what really sold it for a lot of people and really made it feel all the more important, because they looked just as terrifying as Eren as all the other people. And also, Eren was literally killing people, killing innocent kids. He was crazy. He was going insane. And all of that makes it number 5. Number 4 is when we find out the truth of the basement. Seeing how they got to the basement too, especially, is even more enhanced when you take into account that Erwin had just passed and Erwin's whole goal was to figure out the truth of the basement, and having Erwin not be there added another nice little accent of emotional stakes into the episode. And of course, the actual content of the basement was crazy. I feel like everyone, the entire series, they were building up to what is in Eren's basement, what is the secret of the world, and having it be that they're all banished to this island is insane. And not only that, you have to pair that episode 2 with all of the other stakes that went into it, with almost all of them dying in the Beast Titan battle. That payoff was so worth it for everyone that had been watching up to that point, because you really expect those moments to hit harder than anything else, because no one really knew what it was going to be. Everyone knew it was going to be a curveball, and I think the fact that they delivered on something that made sense, that completely changed the complexion of the story, and developing a whole new line, a whole new land, and a whole new backstory, a whole new families for some of these characters, is insane. And it really made you wanting more and wondering that what was the next season gonna be? How could there be more of this? This is an entirely different story from what I signed up for, but at the same time I'm somehow equally as invested still. And to just build up to suspense and have it be something that no one could predict, and somehow, some way, when you look back you realize it was foreshadowed and that the clues were there in front of you the whole time. It just it will never not blow my mind what they managed to execute with that moment. Coming into number 3, I don't know if this is a lot higher on my list than it will be for a lot of you, but number 3 for me is when they make it to the beach, and honestly it was one of the best scenes I feel like they've had ever. In terms of the coloring, like, they don't introduce light blue into this series often. I feel like that scene was absolutely insane, as well as it's paired with the basement, of course, in the fact you have Armin that finally made it to the beach. You have Mikasa who's kind of just cheesing, like she was sitting there like, holy shit, we're on a fucking beach. And Eren, when he points over and he says his iconic line, 向こうにいる敵全部殺せば俺たち It made me even more excited, and of course this is working in conjunction with number 4. There's not as much hard points here because of course it's just a short moment, but it really made me feel like that this was the real end of Attack on Titan, and that whatever the next season was going to be could honestly get a new title. It just felt like such an accurate and smooth conclusion for our characters, and I know that a lot of people might look at this and be like, why are you not putting all this hype over it? I don't know. It was a moment that really landed for me and feel this sense of completion and closing a lot of loops for a lot of characters, while at the same time opening a bunch more. Coming in at number 2, I'm sure everyone knew that this was coming. One of the most iconic moments in anime history, one of the most iconic moments in entertainment history, is of course when Reiner and Berthold reveal themselves as the Colossal and the Armored Titan. What in the world? I cannot tell you what my reaction was when I saw this for the first time. I damn near started screaming. I was like, what? I was like, what? What do you mean? What do you mean? How are you just gonna do it like that? And it was no bullshit. To be that bold and reveal something that severe at that point in the series like that, by just having them casually pull up to him and be like, yo, I'm the Armored Titan. He's the Colossal Titan. You trying to team up? It was just so bold and brave and sick. And honestly, I don't know if this is everyone else, but when I watch something for the first time, I'm a bit of an oblivious watcher. A lot of the times, I'm not paying attention to everything. I did not know what Bertholdt's name was at that point. I genuinely had never noticed him in the series. And every time you rewatch it going forward with that in mind, you're just like, what? He is the Colossal Titan? And it just will shake you to your core, and you'll be like, what? There's no way to not just be absolutely starstruck when you see that for the first time. There's no way you won't rate that in your top 5 moments of anime ever, because it just delivered. And then if you're a UFC fan, if you remember, Eren and Reiner really throw down. They can really get into that jiu-jitsu wrestling stuff down there. That was one of the sickest fights too, and all of the characters were freaking out too at that time, which just made it all the more perfect and all the better. Coming in at number 1 is of course my favorite moment, and don't worry, we got 2 honorable mentions for you after this, but number 1 is by far Irwin's Charge, Irwin's speech, and that whole sequence. And I'm tying in Levi and the Beast Titan in this as well, because it's all one moment. Irwin's speech is my favorite speech in anime history. Irwin's speech will always be relatable, and it will always hit hard, as he's about to tell all these people that are about to march into their death that this is the end, and starting off the speech by affirming to his soldiers that yes, we are going to die. And as they're worried that they've all led meaningless lives, his speech about life and death and reality and what you can do and what you can influence and what you can't influence, while charging, while leading his men into the charge by telling them to be bold, be brave. Think about every death to that point. Every moment had got them to where they were now, and if they could go a little bit further, the people they leave behind can pick up where they left off and achieve something that they have been working so hard for. And even though that they were gonna die, even though that they were not gonna live on, there was gonna be someone else to live on and take on their message. And regardless of if they died there or if they died in the future, they were gonna die nonetheless at some point. If you're gonna die, you might as well die with purpose, and you might as well die helping the people that you're gonna leave behind. And having him lead the charge, and having Levi emotionally just tear through the Titans, tear through the Beast Titan, because he let Erwin die. He was there when Erwin died. He was there when Erwin made his decision to die. He knew how much Erwin wanted to know the truth of the world, and he knew that his best friend was moving on. His best friend was never going to get to see what he dedicated his life to seeing, and seeing him just relentlessly tear through the Beast Titan, relentlessly just slashing, and the way Wit animated it was just like, what in the world? It looked like a razor blade running up a gorilla's back. It's honestly the best way to describe it. It was absolutely perfect. One of the most malicious scenes I think they animated in all of Attack on Titan. Levi just being the blood completely covering Levi's face. It was absolutely perfect, and by far my favorite moment in Attack on Titan. The 2 honorable mentions are Eren dying. In that moment, I really wasn't sure if he was going to come back. Like, I wasn't sure if Eren was ever going to enter the series again, or if Mikasa was about to be the main character. But that really gave stakes to Attack on Titan even more, because they removed him from the series for a good bit, unless you count his Titan form. And honestly, the reveal didn't feel that much like bullshit, because Eren was such a different character after, and he matured so much in death. As weird as that is to say, he becomes a much different character and a much more mature character after, and honestly, I'm a lot more tolerable of a character. I did not like Eren before he died, but afterwards, he was pretty cool. And then we have the castle defense scene, and regardless of foreshadowing, that is still one of the best scenes I think in all of Attack on Titan, because you really felt the stakes of all the Titans just piling up on the castle, and then Ymir revealing to be a Titan was not something I think a lot of us saw coming. Of course, in hindsight, you see Reiner and Bertholdt ready to do the same. It was a moment that really had you relate to characters that at that time, and especially your first time watching, you might not have even paid that much attention to. So of course that has to go in there as one of the best moments. So let me know, is this list crazy? Is this list terrible? Did I forget something super huge and massive? But remember, there's only 10 spots on this list. It's pretty hard to make a list like this and not miss something. So let me know if I put anything in here that's wild. Tear at me in the comments if you want. It's okay, I can take it. And if you enjoyed this video, why don't you check out this one on Attack on Titan taking too long to release their seasons, and drop a like, subscribe, and don't forget, we're just getting started, we're gonna stay consistent, and I'll see you in the next video.